Willie, for me, it was a core of guys. And what I mean by that is that it was a core of guys in Western Canada. It was Claire Drake, George Kingston, Dave King, and Wayne Fleming. And those guys, for me, they were so unselfish. They were educators, they were hockey coaches, they were family men, and yet every July and August, there was those guys. You were at a lot of them. There were those guys running the clinics. And they were the guys that were doing the program of excellence, and they volunteered their time all the time. I gained so much from those people, not just knowledge as far as the game, but how sincere they were on helping people get better. I mean, Claire brought me into his locker room. He brought me into the coaching room. Dave King, anytime I had a problem coaching midget, anytime I had a problem coaching junior, I just called Dave King. And those guys all had a similar attitude, was giving it back. The more they gave back, the more people benefited. And I've really learned over time that that's great leadership. Giving back, paying it forward, the more people you can embrace by being able to involve with your knowledge, or being able to bring information from what I know, the better it's going to make the game, and it's better going to make that coach. And I really believe in coaching as a profession and how important it is, but I also believe in sharing information and how important is this. And I have this story that is remarkable to me. When we were in the Olympics in 2010, we went to a July meeting to get ready for the 2010 Olympics. And there was myself, Mike Babcock, Jacques Lemaire, Lindy Ruff. We were all there. And nobody wanted to share information. And we were going nowhere. We just sat in the room and nobody was giving out anything. And Mike Babcock said to me and everybody else, get out of the room, go play golf, and let's start tomorrow morning. This was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We came back, and the whole meeting room was wallpapered with everything the Detroit Red Wings did. He put up every part of every intricate part of their system, and he put it all out there for us to share, and it opened up everybody to great communication. That, to me, is leadership. He was willing to share all their secrets, so it helped us. And I think that's what's on us as coaches. That's our responsibility.
I look at your career. I look at 3 gold medals. I look at the 3rd most wins in NHL history. Like, that's amazing. Stanley Cups, like Coach of the Year, all those things. Like, just an unbelievable career. And you had to have challenges. Like, you never played the game at a high level. Like, that's one thing that's always hard. How did you do it? How could you become this good? And I mean that sincerely. Like, I am super impressed by what you've done, because it couldn't have been easy.
No, it wasn't. But, you know, I made a decision really early when I started coaching, Willie, that what I lacked in playing ability, I need to find out in knowledge. So I went, and I'm still on that. I find I get up every day wanting to learn something new. And, you know, now I'm working with military people, or I'm working, you know, with team psychologists and things like that. But I felt that I had to go on a learning expedition. So that's why, and people in Edmonton knew this because they saw me there, but every lunch break for 12 years when I worked at this sporting goods store, at least 3 times a week, I'd go watch Claire and Billy at the University of Alberta, and I'd go watch their practices. And then once, usually on Fridays, because we didn't play on Fridays, I would go and watch their game, and then be able to sit in the office with Claire and Billy and discuss it. I felt like I have this yearn for learning, and I felt the more I learned, the better I would become. The thing I'm proudest about my career is that I survived. It's uncommon to be a coach for any more than 4 or 5 years now in the NHL on the same team. And I was able to be a coach for a long time because I felt in my own mind I never stopped learning, and I'm still doing it today. I'm still on Zoom calls 2 or 3 times a week on stuff that I want to learn from, not only coaching and trying to stay current and everything, but I really felt like I had a career in coaching because I never stopped learning. And I think that was my best quality, as I always tried to be on the cutting edge of being willing to try new things that I thought would work. And so I stuck with it. Excellent. And I think one of the things I learned over time was, and we got to think about this in order to help people, because do we really know who's going through tough times? And one of the things that we do is, when we have a meeting with a player, how many times do we ask the player how he's doing before we talk to him about what he's doing? And how many times do we get involved in there? And to me, compassion is everything. In order for us to help, and we can only do our small part, but for us to help, we've got to be prepared to ask the question of how are you doing before we get into what are you doing. And if we're prepared for that question to be answered, then I think we can make real progress in helping people. We can help people as individuals, as coaches, but we can't help them unless we're willing to ask the first question, which is the compassionate question. Too many times we get into solving and correcting problems when the issue is the player doesn't feel good about himself. He doesn't feel good about himself personally or professionally. And we've never asked that question, so we don't know. We're in what we think in solving a problem tactically or technically or whatever, skill-wise, but the player might not be in a position to even absorb the information. So as coaches, and we're the head instructors, we've got to be prepared to ask that question and then sit on that answer, because we might get an answer that we might not like. Or we might feel really uncomfortable. And then if we can't solve the issues, then we've got to get professional people. But you've got to be prepared to ask that question on how that person's doing, and keep asking that question until an answer comes out before you could start coaching and teaching.
What if advice would you have for a young player going into the combine situation?
Well, I think for us, don't get lost in it. In other words, it's one aspect of evaluation, but what really is evaluated is what do you do on the ice, and how do you fit in on the team, and where do you fit in. I think that, there's data that everybody collects that either moves evaluators in a certain direction one way or the other, but at the end of the day, it's not the end be all. It's like getting drafted by the WHL. It's not the end be all. It's understanding that there's all kinds of routes to get to your goal. You just got to stay determined on getting better. But at the end of the day, understanding that if you're doing the right things, we'll find you. If you're playing the right way, we'll find you. You don't have to look for us. We're going to be there. We know how to dig in every bush, and we know where to look for things. But understand is, when you show that you're not a team player during the game, or when you show that you're selfish or you're not prepared to work, those things become everlasting thoughts in our own mind. So understand that everything we're looking for is work related. Are you prepared to stay on task for an extended period of time? And you get to do that during the competition. But the combine is the start of the process. It's not the end. What is close to the end, though, is how you show yourself as a teammate when we're watching you play games.
Is there any answer in the combine? You've sat in on some of the combine meetings, have you? Is there any one answer? You don't have to name the player, but one answer that stood out in your mind that was just a great answer?
I remember when we were interviewing a guy at the NHL level, and we asked him who had the biggest influence on him. And he said, my dog. And everybody was shocked. Like, what do you mean your dog? And he said, my dog is the most compassionate, hopeful person I've ever seen in my life. It doesn't matter what I do, or it doesn't matter what type of day. As soon as I walk in the door, he's so happy to see me. And we all were taken aback by somebody first saying my dog, but then he pontificated on what it was, and it was really impressive because he needed that emotional support, and his dog supplied it to him on a daily basis.